Hello, everyone. You're listening to the Small Business Show. My name is Swire Ho. You can also call me the Promo Guy. Today, my guest is Michael Tucker from the Funnel Pro. We all know that creating an unprecedented income and influence can take years to do, but Michael has found a way to shorten that time span to just days through his virtual event and digital marketing secrets. After generating over 30 million in profits over the 2 3 years of all his clients, he's now ready to share his secrets formula for running a successful virtual event and marketing tips with any online entrepreneur who's ready to grow their influence and their income fast. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited. I was telling the team, finally, the day is here. We get to record an episode together. So I'm so excited.
Yeah, thank you. And from your bio, the little things, I have so many questions for you. It almost sounds like it's too good to be true.
I
But
know,
before
right?
that, yeah, want to find out more about your background. How did you decide to share your marketing secrets after doing very successful events for clients?
Yeah. I mean, I realize there's a lot of business owners out there that have a message, they have a mission or a product that they need to get out there. And they're just like banging their self on the head saying, how do I get this product or this service out there? And a lot of people were saying, Michael, you are crushing it with virtual events. Can you show us? And so that's when I was like, oh man, this is a skill that other people need. And I didn't start out learning, I didn't ever expect to be in digital marketing. I never expected to be in virtual events, but it's something that I found myself eventually getting into after college, and it's just changed a lot of people's lives. So that's why I decided to kind of go out there and start sharing it with people because it's super powerful.
Thanks for sharing. Before jumping on to it, let's assume that we have not attended a virtual event, which is kind of slim nowadays. But what would you consider a virtual event? Is it a webinar? Is it a Zoom meeting? Is it vice versa? How would you consider, a virtual event to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because a lot of people use virtual events very broadly. So I'll say this, virtual events is where you can get, it doesn't matter what type for me, it doesn't matter what type, if it's a webinar, a masterclass, a workshop. For me, a virtual event is getting your potential clients and getting your prospects, getting your leads into one room. It doesn't matter if that's a Zoom, it doesn't matter if it's a StreamYard, but getting them in one central location virtually to where you can provide insight to your products and services. So for us, primarily, we have a few models that we use. We use a lot of webinars. We use something called a 5-day challenge model. If you've never heard of that, there's a few that we love, but I would say a virtual event is going to be a little bit different for everybody, but it's where you can just pull all your leads, all your prospects, or as many of them as possible into one virtual room to where you can educate them and then you can provide your service or your product for a price.
And I've been to a few of them myself. Some of them are really good. I was really engaged and absorbed the information. Some of them I click in and I click out in 30 seconds. So,
Right.
in your point of view, like what are the secret sauce for engaging event virtually?
Yeah, that's a great question because I've been there many times, right? And maybe some of your listeners here are the same way. They're like, "Oh, this class looks awesome." They see a website or they see an ad and they click on it and they register and they show up and then it's like, this class is not what I like. And I think most of the time, and maybe you can relate to this, most of the times the reason you probably hopped out is because one, the information didn't align with the what drawed you in, right? With the copy or the messaging. And so I would say a lot of people when they run these virtual events, they think the event needs to be about me, me, me. That is totally wrong. You got to remember your clients, your prospects are entering this room needing something and wanting something, and you need to provide that to them. So if you want to provide a really engaging virtual event, you need to build it with the person on the other line in mind. Meaning, so you came in, you said you've hopped out of a few. It was maybe because the person that was talking. Oh, I've done $30 million in sales. I've done like get to the point. I tell people when you're doing virtual events, you have to have a hook and you have to have in content that's going to encourage them to stay. And a lot of times that's maybe messaging, verbiage that's based around their pain points, right? So you want to speak to their pain points. But number two, I would say this, you need to um, really, really build. Let me say it this way, because I don't want to confuse or say this in a way that would maybe confuse anybody. Number two, I would say that this is one of the most important things you need in a virtual event, which is energy.
Mm.
A lot of people, they run these events, but they show up like this. Hey guys, my name is Michael. How's everybody? Like, you have to come in with passion, with vibrant energy, and to make people stay, right? You have to become an attractive character, and I think so many people struggle with that. It doesn't matter if you are an introvert or extrovert, you still need to show up with some sort of energy, because people feed off of energy. So those are the two things. I would say there's probably 5 to 10 others, but I would say if you want to build an engaging virtual event, whether that's a webinar, a workshop, online, you one need to make sure you're building your content with the client in mind or your prospect in mind. And number two, you need to have good energy to make people want to stay and not make them want to jump ship.
Yeah, I've been to one recently, where the host actually done all the things that you just said. He not only he dressed up, he wear a suit and tie. He actually overdressed for the event, right? It's a sales type of meeting, and he really dressed very nice and a nice background. And then not only that, I don't think it's easy to do. He actually monitored the chat while he is presenting. So if
Yep.
I ask a question, he actually addressed that. It's not an easy skill to acquire, and it take attention out from you. But if you're able to engage people, people want to be engaged, right? Even though they're virtually,
Yeah.
they might checking their emails, they sometimes maybe watching YouTube or whatever that they're doing. So you really need to capture people's attention fast sometimes, because it just take one click for me to close the meeting.
One click. Yeah. And I'll say this, because you're so spot on. Something that we teach our clients is something called call and response, right? So during your webinar, during your virtual event, you want to be doing this call and response, meaning you're asking them something and having them put it in the chat, right? And this is a skill that takes practice, right? Running virtual events, this is public speaking. So you have to practice, you have to put in the reps, right? But what we could teach our a lot of our clients is, hey, this call and response, that at least every 2 to 3 minutes, you need to be asking them something and letting them respond in the chat. So this would be in a podcast setting here, or in a webinar. It may be saying, hey, if you're listening to this, comment yes if you agree in the chat. That's keeping them engaged. That's keeping them
Mhm.
energized, right? And that's very intentional. And now you guys may be like, wait, I get it. People in past events were doing that. Yes, that was used intentionally to keep you engaged. So we'll use words like comment the word yes, or comment a fire emoji, or if you're on Zoom, give me a thumbs up if you like what I just said, or if you agree with what I just said. Things like that to keep people really engaged is super crucial. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah. So, Michael, let's put it all together, right? So, assuming that a company has been in business for a while, they have their database, right? They have their client, right? Some of them are loyal, some of them not as much. So they decided to do a virtual event. So how would you guide them to get started? And I think one of the most challenging question that listener might have is, how do we have them come and join the event? Like, how do we reach out to them so we get bodies showing up?
Yeah, great question. I think there's several questions there in one, it sounds like. So I'll start with the first one. And you said this question of, how do we start? If
Hmm.
we have an existing list, they may be engaged, they may not. I say start out with a webinar, right? And a webinar is a 60 to 90-minute training where you bring in these leads, and I'm not going to call them leads, let's call them prospects. You bring in these
Hmm.
prospects, and then you educate them. So for example, if you're a life insurance agent, you may run a 60 to 90-minute class where you are training someone on the benefits and why they need life insurance, right? And addressing their questions and addressing the issues that they may have had about life insurance in the past. And then at the end, you're just going to offer your service and offer, your product to them. And so I always say start out with a 60 to 90-minute webinar, because it's super easy. You can throw up Zoom. I mean, Zoom, I think, only costs for a paid account $10, $20 a month. And if you're just starting out, that's maybe all you need. So
Hmm.
just start one of those, and you can go as simple or as complex as you want, right? You can go in, you just shoot a Zoom link out to everybody, or you can build an entire website, an entire funnel where you're capturing their data and sending them reminders, right? So you can, it just depends on where you're at. If you have a team, I definitely would say that, schedule a 60 to 90-minute webinar, probably 2 to 3 weeks from now. Build out a simple landing page, a simple funnel, we call it, right? Where people can register. But if you're just a one-man show or one-woman show, just go ahead and you could do this today. Schedule a Zoom link about your niche, your industry for 2 to 3 weeks from now, and just text the link out to your list or email the link out to your list or post it on social media and letting people know you're running this class. Now there's a few things, right? Because we want to answer the question, how do we make sure people actually show up?
Mhm.
That's, we got to stay in front of them. So one thing I will tell you, whether you have these robust systems or you don't, at least send a few emails, and we highly recommend you send a few text messages to them reminding them about the event prior. So normally we'll send probably 48 hours before, we'll send an email just telling them, reminding them. 24 hours before, maybe like 8 hours before, 1 hour before, and then when we go live. So there's a lot of reminders there, but these reminders are very crucial because, I mean, people, there's so many. You let me know, how many events have you signed up for and never showed up for? Or how many things have you registered for and then got busy and forgot about? And you're like, oh man, I wish I would have been able to attend that. So I think making sure people show up is just having that nurture sequence in place.
Yeah, and there's so many free events, right? People want you to get engaged, and it's no barrier to for me to go, right? I just if I have
Yeah.
something else to go. Um, but speaking of that, how would you advise, people who are doing it, for the first time, right? They have the list. Like, what should they talk about? Are there general rules or guideline, or it's just, maybe answer some of the most frequently asked question in your particular industry?
Yeah, great question. So what I normally like to do is I follow this framework, and you guys can write this down if you're listening or you're watching. I do this framework to where um, generally we spend the first 10 to 15 minutes opening up. This is not, you're not spending 20, 30 minutes introducing yourself, why you're amazing. 10 to 15 minutes max, we're opening up, addressing the client's problems that they're currently facing, maybe even introducing yourself for 5 minutes or so. So the beginning is really important because you want to have a strong hook and something that's going to keep them to want to stay, right? Like you said, you bounce in and out of some events. So you want to try to keep like a hook to keep them, to make them want to stay. We're going to address the issues that we're going to solve in the class. And then you do a short intro of yourself for maybe 5 minutes. Okay. So that's the very beginning. And then we get to teaching, okay? In the middle part, we'll spend about 30 minutes teaching here, okay? So 10 to 15 minutes at the beginning, setting the stage. We got about 30 minutes of teaching. And this teaching is very intentional. It's not just teaching about random stuff. It's teaching about things that are going to help your clients see your service differently and help them overcome the issues and problems they're having. So you're going to teach for about 30 minutes. And then at the end, what you're going to do is you're come back and then you're going to present your opportunity for 10 to 15 minutes, right? So we'll just say 10 minutes at the beginning, 30 minutes in the middle, that's 40. And at the end, another, I'll just say 10 to 15, you hit right about that hour mark. And so, like I said, this is practice. You're going to get in there. You're going to realize what you like to talk about, what you don't like to talk about, what resonates with people, what doesn't resonate. And there's like, I could give you like a whole, like really, really detailed, like rundown of this, but that's the high level. Is the beginning is setting the stage, middle is the actual content, and then the end is the pitch. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think depending on the person, right? If you're doing like a in person and there are people looking at you, it's actually more difficult, right? Because you're looking at people, right? On your body, are they engaged? But versus, even if people are super engaged, you're still looking at your camera. Like we act like we're looking at each other, but we are just looking to our camera, and then you're allowed to have all kinds of notes and cheat sheets, right, around
Yeah.
you. So I think with practice, and not only that, you could easily record yourself, doing that. So maybe the first time you look really awkward. Maybe you just it takes practice, but I think it could be done in the time that are faster than what you normally develop in person public speaking. Would you agree, Michael?
Yeah, I would agree. Actually, I think I have a book. Let me see. I have a book sitting over here. I'm gonna grab it real quick. I think I set it over here next to my desk. I want to talk about this point because that's very key. Will you give me permission for like 5 seconds to go see if this book is sitting right here?
Okay.
Okay, give me 1 second.
All right. So I think with the technology, then we can really work on doing events. Like Michael is saying, it takes practice, it takes the intention for getting it. So and then you
Yeah.
can actually keep reach people that are not in your physical attention. Oh, so Michael is back. What's going on, Michael?
No, I thought I set it over here, but I think I took it upstairs. So there was a book I've been reading, and I wanted to use this as a point. There's a book called The One Thing. Have you ever read that before? The One
Not
Thing?
yet, not yet.
Okay. Very good book. And this one thing, the book all talks about narrowing our focus because we live in a world where there's a lot going on. And we know that, right? There's a lot of distractions, a lot of things happening. But what would happen if you focused on one thing? And so, what I like to tell people that in my clients, and I was going to bring this book up for an illustration, is that there's so many different marketing strategies, there's so many different methods you can be using in your business. But if you just commit to one thing, and that could be getting good at one of these live events. It could change everything. It could change everything. And so I tell people, you know, if you're going to do these virtual events, don't just commit to one, commit to doing multiple. Even if the first one is a total disaster, learn from it, restructure, and then re-implement. Because I promise you, like virtual events, I love them because they place you as the authority in front of your audience.
Hmm.
What do you mean? Right now, I am on Swireho's podcast, right? The Small Business Show Live. People, they're listening and watching this right now. They think Michael Tucker has authority. Why? Because I am on a stage, right? If this was an in-person event, I could go stand on the stage and speak. And just because I'm standing on the stage, people would assume I have authority and I know what I'm doing. That could be true. That could be not true. Right. So I heard like that could be like I'm sitting here talking to you guys on this podcast. And just because I'm on the podcast, it gives me authority and it puts me above everybody else. Now, you guys have to do your due diligence on me to see if I'm actually who I say I am, which I am. But that's the power of virtual events and why I would really encourage you to get good at this one thing is because the fruit of it is great and your authority will get leveled up. People will start looking at you as the authority in your industry. And we all want to be the authority in our industry, right?
Hmm.
And
No,
that's why I love this.
not only that, you think you are the expert of your industry and you know everything that's to know within your industry, but until you get asked questions live sometime, right, like we're doing, you don't know what you don't know. Like, because if I ask Michael a question that he might not encounter, then really he won't know the answer. So but by doing it more casually, right, so you can kind of deflect or go around the circle and answer the question your way. So these are some of the skills that we need to develop, especially as a salesperson. People ask you the same question in different way. How do you really talk to them uh, with the same level, right? Because you don't want to talk up or talk down on people, and you want it to appear. We always talk about storytelling. You can't really tell story until you tell it like 1,000 times at least to
Right.
to to get the jokes in, to get the empathy in. To really to tell a good story, you have to tell it a lot of time.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll say this, if you ever find yourself in a situation, whether it's a virtual event or just in person, and somebody asks you something you don't know, don't try to make up an answer. Okay. It's only going to hurt you. And it's only going to hurt. What I tell people is if you don't know the answer, just tell them, hey, I don't know that right now, or I'll get back to you. Or maybe acknowledge it and say, hey, can we take this offline? One of my favorite speakers, he actually uses that and he says, hey, if you're ever on stage and somebody asks you a question you don't really know how to answer, just come back and say, hey, is it okay if we answer that in the email inbox? I have some important stuff I want to share and go over, and can we address that offline? Most
Mm,
people will say yes. And so that's a good, or just tell them, you know what, at this moment, I don't have that knowledge and I'll find it for you. But yeah, so it's very, I'll say this. I agree with you 100% because there's been times that I'm like, wow, those are questions I don't know how to answer. And so I'll circle back and I'll say, you know what? Maybe I need to work on my craft a little bit more. Maybe I need to study a little bit more and get more mentorship. Right. And so, yeah, I would say this, that if you're here and you're listening to this, don't let that stop you from taking action. Don't let that stop you from putting this in place. If you feel like you're supposed to be using virtual events, you're supposed to be using your voice to get your service and your mission out there, don't let the fear of the unknown of what may come through that chat thread stop you from doing what you know you should do.
mm. Thank you for the great advice. So let's talk about money, Michael. So you have your followers. Let's assume that they do attend to the event. So you mentioned about turning follower to fans through virtual events. Obviously, in terms of their word fans, they're more engaged and they like your brand, right? For we all know that when people become fans of a business, they're more willing to purchase from us than people just follow us. They might not even engage with what we do. So how can we do that through our virtual events?
Yeah, I think showing up and just adding true value to people. And I think right now in this digital landscape, there's tons of people out there that are just money driven. And it really shows. Like when people attend events, they're going to be able to tell if you're just doing this for the money or if you're there to actually provide some value to them. Now, this is a mechanism to provide sales, but there's a fine line, right? And so I think if you're here and you want to turn your followers to fans, you need to actually build these with your followers in mind. What do they want? What do they need? Right? And so we talked about that 5-10 minutes ago, but I'm just going to circle back because it's super important. There's these people, they're following you, they're watching on social media, or they're reading your emails, or they're watching you on Facebook. But if you can actually step in and actually change their life, because that's what we're building. We're not necessarily building virtual events. We're building transformational experiences. And the way you build transformational experiences is by really sitting down and saying, okay, what do these people need? What do they want? And how can we build content that's going to help them get there? And how I look at it is kind of like a map, right? If I was here and I'm in Kentucky, if I was in Kentucky and I wanted to get to California, I'm going to need a GPS or a map. But if I don't have that, I may end up in Texas. I may end up in Michigan. I may end up backwards over in South Carolina. I don't know. But you have to lay out a roadmap for these people and help them get closer to their journey. And if you don't provide them a roadmap, then or like any direction, then there's no way they can become fans and get closer to the center of your ecosystem. And what I often tell people is imagine you had a piece of paper and you drew a big circle on it and you're in the very middle. All marketing is putting a message out to try to pull them into your circle, right? So if there's a big circle and you're in the very middle, marketing is just trying to get people into your ecosystem, into your circle, closer to you in the middle, and you and your products. And so I would say that just make sure you're providing mass amount of value that is tailored to them. But I'll say this, virtual events, when they're built right, they do all the heavy lifting for you. Because I want you to write this down if you're listening. The more immersion, the higher the conversion. What does that mean? The more time people spend with you, the higher the chance they will actually buy your product, the higher the chance of conversion of them into a client. So that's why I love virtual events, because people can spend an hour, 2 hours with you, maybe even a little longer, and their trust gets heightened, your rapport gets built, and they look at you as the guy or they look at you as the girl. And that's when they start going from followers to fans, is because they're like, wow, I just spent 60-90 minutes with this person and I learned more than I ever knew about XYZ. And so there's many different like tactical messages I can go about, but I would say that was the high level. And I apologize. Once I start talking, I'll talk all day, man. So I apologize.
No, I think you had a good point, and I think one company that I want to mention is HubSpot. I use that for CRM. They have tons of contents. They actually create their own academy. A lot of times, it's not directly related to HubSpot. They teach you marketing. They teach you email marketing, a lot of different stuff, and they obviously have their webinar. They have their one-on-one. So what it is they have done to me is, since I am immersed, right, using your word to learn about a particular skills, I'm more stuck to the program, because using the program and using the knowledge that I have, I can do all this stuff right now. So they actually made me sticking with the company, versus
Right.
if I go into a new software which I know nothing about, maybe again I'll do a few clicks and then it's done. By spending the time developing those content and make sure that I know how to use their product, they actually make me, maybe not a fan, but I'm a loyal customer.
Yeah, which is their end goal, right? That's what they want. So, yeah, and I mean, there's a lot we could go into with virtual events. I know that one thing a lot of people ask me is, and it's if it's okay, we go into this. A lot of people they'll ask me like, how do you use your social media to grow your virtual events, and
Mhm.
how do you do this online? And so there's several ways you can push people to a virtual event, right? There's the organic, so you can use your email list, you can use your SMS list, we can use your following. You may be like, Michael, what if I don't have a big following? Like, it's okay. Actually, one of my first clients, he had only a couple hundred people on his email list. He only had a couple hundred people on Instagram and less than 1,000 people on social media. In his first event, we were able to make $30,000. $30,000. It's remember this, it's not about the quantity of the people in the room, but the quality of the people in the room, right?
Mhm.
I would rather have 10 of my dream customers in a room versus 1,000 that were not my dream customers. So just remember that even if you have a small social media, if you have the right messaging and you build the right event, it's okay. You can still pull people in. But guess what? Here's a little ninja trick for you. It doesn't always have to be your audience. You can build a virtual event and run it to other people's audiences. So if you're here and you're like, man, I just don't have a lot of people following me, or I don't have a big email list, find someone who does. Make a win-win scenario, figure out if there's an affiliate split or something, and go to people and run your class, run your virtual event to their audiences. And that first client I ever had, he made 30,000, about 25 to 30,000 himself. And then we turned around and he said, this webinar really is converting. What if we found more people? And so we went to friends, influencers, and started running the event, that same exact event, over and over again to new eyeballs, new people in other people's ecosystem. So
Mhm.
that's one ninja trick there. If you guys want to implement that, we could spend all day talking about like those partnerships. But then you got paid marketing, right? And so you have your organic social media, you got your partnerships, so then there's paid marketing, Facebook ads, Google ads. That's, I would only recommend those if you have a budget for that. Don't start ads if you can't spend more than a week's I'm sorry, more than a month's worth. I tell people if you're going to be spending money on marketing for your business, paid marketing wise, I want you to do it in a way where you can commit to it long term, right? I want you to commit to it for more than just 2 or 3 days, because if you come and say, hey, I only got $20-$30 for ads this month, probably not going to work. But if you can commit a set amount each month and actually build that into your budget, that's what's going to help. That's what's going to provide you a little bit more reliability. So I just want to touch on that because I know a lot of people ask, how do you fill up your virtual events? But those are just
Mhm.
a few ways.
Yeah, going back to your example too, Michael, you mentioned like life insurance. Like if you're a life insurance agent who are, trying to build your following, you can actually invite a financial planner who doesn't sell life insurance,
Yes.
or a
Yes.
CPA, or maybe an influencer who teach Gen Z how to spend their money, right? So that would be a good fit. And I actually know a insurance agent who was a gamer. So now his focus is all on esports, where they make the contract for playing a team, why they should buy life insurance for the long term. So there are millions of things that if you broaden your mind, especially with the virtual platform. Michael is in Kentucky, I'm in California. It could actually be a worldwide event if you plan it the right way.
Yeah, 100%. And I love that. That was a great example you threw out there because we've done that same exact thing. And so we've had this one life insurance agent. He's went and found people who taught investing, people who taught budgeting, and they just found people that taught finances in general and went and hit those people and ran classes to them. And so that's worked amazingly well.
Okay. So Michael, I think you answered a lot of good question, and get to the point that people might have individual questions for you. So for a listener who want to reach out to you, what would be the best way?
There's many different ways. We actually have the site that's here on the screen, or if you're listening to the audio, you can go to thefunnelpros.com. We talk about many different things on our site, but just go on there. You can actually schedule a call with me. With me personally, nobody on our team. If you want to chat to see how virtual events can help you, no sales call. I'm just gonna hop on a call with you and see what your business is like and talk about what strategies maybe you could implement. It's a 15-minute call with me. Just go ahead and you can go to thefunnelpros.com. Or if you're a social media person and you're just like, hey, I just want to check out what Michael's doing, I'm at Instagram is my most active, and it's at official Michael Tucker. So I would love to connect with you. Just let me know you came from the Small Business Show, and I would love to go back and tell Swire Ho, like, hey, these people came from the show. But I would love to connect with you.
Thank you so much, Michael. And then it's very wonderful to have you talk on this today.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. And if I can ever do anything else to add value to your community, please let me know.
Thank you.